Hello, everybody. I'm Mel Albin. I am the host for the Jazz Confusion Power Hour on the Source Radio Network. And, we have had a succession of amazing guests on our show. We continue to have amazing guests. And tonight, I have one of the absolute originals and really one of the best R&B performers that you'll ever come to hear. And I think you're going to really enjoy his story. Each week, we present an artist and we spend an hour looking behind the mind. We want to get in depth to find out what makes this artist tick, what makes the artist so attractive to his fans and followers, and what made him so successful. So, we have a lot to discuss and a lot to go into, and I think you're going to enjoy the interview. Today, I have with me as my special guest, Larry Dodson. Larry was the lead singer for many years for the Barkays, and we'll talk about that and the history of the Barkays a little bit. And then Larry has had a wonderful solo career, and when you hear his background, you hear what he's done, you're going to be really amazed at what a great artist he really is. I'm going to play one of his new songs that I think you're going to love. It's called Harmonica Man, and he's going to be our featured artist of the week, which he is. And you can go click on it and hear Harmonica Man on the Source Radio Network. That's SORC radio.com. SORCradio.com. WTSN is our call letters. And we play jazz 24/7. We play all kinds of jazz, straight up jazz. We play jazz fusion. Anything that has to do with jazz crossover, jazz country, jazz rock, jazz reggae, jazz soul, anything that crosses over with jazz and R&B. So without further ado, let me bring on my guest for tonight, my good friend, the wonderful Larry Dodson. How are you, Larry?
Man, I am absolutely great, man. For
That's
for
great.
for an aging musician, I'm doing
You still have it. I'm going to play one of your recent hits, and
great, great,
I
great. Good
see
way to
I
start
see
the.
all those gold records behind you.
Yeah, I thought I'd give you a little ambience back in the back there.
That's great. What's the gold one on your top right? What is that one
This
for?
one, that's Flying High on Your Love. That was our second gold album. I've got five or six around here, and I got a lot of good memories on this wall, man. I ran out of space, and my wife would say, "Whatever you got to put it in your office." This is the office that we share in my home. But yeah, that's just that was my second gold album, man.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
So look, let's start talking about your life. This is your life, Larry Dodson. so, so we're gonna
Okay.
start off. For people that don't know, Larry became the lead singer for the Bar-Kays within a year of the death of Otis Redding and some of the band members in a tragic plane crash in Lake Winona. And it was a very difficult time. And one of the members on the plane did survive the crash, and with another existing member that didn't take the flight, fortunately.
Absolutely.
Larry will tell us about it, but they brought Larry on to be their lead singer, and that didn't start Larry's career. It was already started when he was 11 years old. So we'll start talking about Larry, but I want everybody to know, the Bar-Kays were one of the original great funk bands. They were quite amazing. They were a studio band. They had their own, songs and record recordings and toured, and they were major influence, within funk and within R&B. And Larry was a part of that for almost 30 years. So, Larry, it's an honor to have you here. Like I said,
Oh, it's
um,
my pleasure, Mel. It's my pleasure.
yeah,
This Barcades, man, and it would take all night to talk about it. And phenomenal band. You were hinting, talking about it a minute ago. So prior to me joining, I joined the band in 1970. But let me just say, the Barcades' very first recording was a million seller. For those who may be old enough
yeah.
to remember this, it was called Soul Finger.
Soulfinger, I love that track.
Soul Finger, right? Prior to that, they were just a real hit band around Memphis, but they'd also been playing as a house band at Stax Records for Johnny Taylor, Wilson Pickett, just you name it, man. Sam and Dave, Otis, of course. So, but they didn't have a lead singer. It was an instrumental group, and when they asked me to join, I was flabbergasted, man, because I had no idea these guys had their eyes set on having a singer after having such a great career as an instrumental band. But they were looking ahead, and I could understand that just because during that era, instrumental bands were hot.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
were.
they were very, very hot. But they were looking ahead, and they wanted a front guy. And I joined in 1970, and I jumped right into what eventually ended up being the Black Rock album. That was the very first album that I did. But little did I know they were already preparing to have a singer. They just didn't have one. They were doing the music. And Mel, I was scared to death, man. I just did not think that I was qualified because we were
How could
crazy at the bar. The bar
yeah,
came
but how,
like
yeah, but
so crazy.
how could you be scared to death at 11 years old? You started your own band. Okay, I want to get back a little bit further back in
Going
the
back to
industry.
that, yeah,
Yeah.
I
My,
started
let,
a
let me
doo
ask.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, my first question is, before you start a band, you have to have a concept. And if you were going to be a singer, you have to have a voice. Tell
Yeah.
me, tell me between 1 and 11 years old how you found your calling. How did that happen?
Well, you know what? It was my duty at home, sort of, between my other three brothers to wash dishes, and we would just trade a night. And my thing was I would wash the dishes and I would just sing. I didn't really have I didn't sing a lot in church during that time, but I always had an idea that I would be a singer. But it was the doo wop. I invented a group called the Temprees, which went on to make a lot of good music, man. Dedicated to the one I love, Love Maze, I
Oh, yeah.
Love You, You Love Me. All this happened after I joined the Barcades. But kind of to answer your question, man, I just had it in my soul, to sing. But we wanted to be so much like the Temptations. Thus, we were
Everybody
called
did.
the Temprees.
Yeah. Well, tell me this question. One question. At
Yeah.
11 years old, how do you form a band and understand the business of a band and get the band performing? How do you do it?
Well, you know what? It was a vocal group more so than a band. Now we did have a band, but it was a vocal group. It was four of us. And as I said, man, if I had had one more guy, we would have been spitting images of the Temptations. But it ended up being four of us. But I was dead set on being involved in a vocal group. I was a doo wopper, singing stuff from the Delphonics and the
Oh, wow.
Stylistics and the
Yeah.
Temptations.
Oh,
But we did have a band, but that wasn't really what I wanted. I
yeah.
wanted to get the doo wop group going first.
How would you describe your voice, Larry? If you know, how would you? How,
Well, let me just say this. So growing up in my house, Mel, Ray Charles was embedded in my mind and in my spirit. Of course, there was Stevie Wonder, but Ray Charles was absolutely my idol. He had such a distinct voice, and your show is all about jazz, and I grew up in jazz. My dad was a jazz buff. I grew up around Sarah Vaughan
oh, wow. You're my.
and Count Basie, but Ray Charles was my biggest influence. So I'm a soul singer. With it ain't so much I got such a great voice, but I do have a voice that touches you. When I sing, you're gonna feel it. You know.
Yeah, you do. I know.
Yeah,
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 I just wanted to hear from you what you thought of your voice. So, and how, when you first started singing, not in your family, but with the Temprees, um, how the other guys that were with you, that
yeah.
sang with you, you know, what was your range? What was your role? Within.
I was the David Ruffin guy. Let me just tell you how we broke. I was
Gotcha.
the David Ruffin guy. Delwan was the Eddie Kendricks guy with the beautiful falsetto voice. Jabbo, his name was Jasper Phillips. We called him Jabbo. He was a cross between the two. And Scotty was kind of like the guy who kept us dressed good. He didn't really have a really good voice, but he kept us sharp as a whip. But Dale One had he was a spitting image of Eddie Kendricks, man. And that's how we
Wow.
and we
Wow.
traded up being singing lead parts, but I was the guy who kept everybody in line, made us come to rehearsals, and kind of the core of it since
Where,
I
where
started.
did you perform when you were that young? Where did you start performing? You couldn't be in
High
bars.
school. No, no, yeah, high
Okay.
school. Let me tell you this. So back in Memphis, Tennessee, growing up in Memphis, Tennessee, there was just a plethora of clubs. Every club had just a really good band. This was this was during the time that music was everywhere in Memphis. So in every club, there was always a house group, or and Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday nights were good nights. But we had to actually get affidavits signed from my parents to
Right.
allow us to come in because we weren't old enough. But we had, and the affidavit said we could come perform, but we had to go to the dressing room and stay there. We couldn't fraternize with anybody. We were much too young. Couldn't drink, do any of that thing, anything, because two of those nights were school nights, Wednesdays and Fridays. So
Right.
that's how we were allowed to play in the clubs. Our parents, and then I thank God for my parents who thought enough of me and were interested enough in my career to let me do that. You know.
So for how long were you with the Temprees before you left
I,
and went to the Barcays?
well, let's see, Mel. I was in maybe the seventh grade, and we stayed together until 1970. 1970, March of 1970, James came to one of the clubs that we were singing in called the Showcase. And he came, and I didn't know they had their eye on me all the time to be the guy that they was going to eventually ask to be the singer. But he asked me one Sunday night, I'll never forget, would I leave the Temprees and come take on this task of being the front man for the Barcades? And I didn't want to let him know, but it took all but about 10 minutes to tell him, yeah.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
pretended to be a hard catch, and I said, "Well, give me some time to think about it."
So you didn't know those cats. You didn't know the Barcays. When you started with the Temprees, you didn't know any of them personally.
Well, I knew James. I wasn't close to any of them because they were just like the hot guys.
Yeah.
Now I tell you what would happen sometimes on big concerts. Now the Temprees, we got to be pretty hot.
Yeah.
So there were times when the Barcades would say, "Well, okay, you're on the show. What songs you gonna sing?" And you guys get two numbers, and then give me the records, and we'll learn it, and we won't rehearse with you. But you just show up and we'll play for you. That happened a couple of times.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, but I didn't really know those guys.
I have a question for you. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't want to take you too far off the track, but there's an interesting story with the Barcays. It has to do with the keyboard player Ronnie that was killed
Yeah.
in a plane crash. Did you know him at all?
Mel, you never ever, this is just so amazing. My grandmother worked for the Caldwell family
Oh wow.
as
Why don't you
a
explain? I'm sorry. Why don't you explain who Ronnie was? He's a white dude.
right. He was a white dude, right? And,
Yeah.
and the Barcades were an interracial group
Yeah.
from the beginning.
The only one in Memphis, I think, right?
Well, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
let's see. That I tell you what. There was the Marquis, who were
That's right. That's
yeah,
right.
the
Yes.
Memphis Horns, Booker T and MGs, and that goes a lot to say me a lot about some of the acts that Stax. The racial thing didn't really exist at Stax Records.
That's great.
Outside of the walls of Stax, it did, but oh man, we got along with we weren't thinking about we wasn't thinking about making music. Race didn't make a difference. There was a lot of mixed bands at Stax Records.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man.
But
My grandmother,
Ronnie.
my grandmother worked for the Caldwell family,
Yeah.
and I didn't put that together until after later in life when I said all those they would give her clothes, and I had T-shirts and stuff like that. I would see the Caldwell family on some of the things, and I had been wearing some of the clothes that actually she would bring home. So I was kind of
Wow.
predestined to be with the Barcades. And another quick story: when Soulfinger was done, they came over to my school, Carver High School, because they needed a live crowd, and I missed being on the background noise that they needed to put on the record by one car length. The car was pulling off, and I missed the car going over to the studio to record. Yes.
I know Ronnie's second cousin. What's that?
Okay.
His nephew. He didn't even know anything about Ronnie. He found out from his aunt. and
Right.
he's working on a documentary on Ronnie.
That's exactly right. He interviewed me.
Oh, he did.
He
You know
did.
what I'm
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about?
yeah. He found me. Yeah.
Yeah.
An
Okay.
interesting kid.
See what a small world it is. I know him. You know him. It's such a small world. It really
It
is.
certainly is. He did. He found me and he interviewed
Yeah.
me, and he's a very good kid, man.
Yeah. He is. He is. He's a musician also.
Absolutely. And the documentary was pretty good.
Yeah. It was.
Yeah.
Did a good job. Okay.
Yeah.
So okay. Now you're with the Barkays. You've been chosen as their lead singer. How does it
Right.
start? How does it start? What happens?
So Alan Jones, who then was their mentor, and he was the A&R guy for Stax. Here's how we just to read short story. Back then, you would catch the buses, and he and I would meet on the corner downtown as we would change buses, and he would say to me, "This is before I joined. Now I'm gonna get you. I got something for you." And I never knew what he was talking about, but he was behind telling James and the guys, "I got a guy who you guys need to talk to," and that ultimately led to them coming up.
Wow.
And they didn't really, they didn't really care too much to have a singer. You really want to know the truth? They loved each other, and the thought of having a singer taking some of the spotlight off them, that didn't ring too well with them. They would
Wow.
hardly say a word to me. I mean, they weren't mad at me or anything, but it took a while for them to get used to having a singer, for the first time. But after I got the singing and recording on the record, the first album, Black Rock, they understood why Alan pointed toward me.
You
I
know,
changed the whole culture of the band.
Larry, you bring up an interesting point about instrumental bands. Some of my friends, Pieces of a Dream, they're good
Yeah,
friends of mine,
yeah.
and Curtis Harmon, the drummer who started Pieces with James Lloyd.
Okay,
Curtis is going to be on the show in a couple of weeks. Also, he's going to be on the Power Hour too.
okay.
They've had vocalists like Mesa on occasion, but it's
Hmm.
hard for them. It's hard for them to share the spotlight with a vocalist. It just is. You
I
know,
get it. I get
yeah.
it. I get it. I had to win them over, man. I had to win them over. Even from first gig, I had to win them over because it was like, Alan, where'd you get this guy from? But
Yeah.
after a while, though, the hollers and the screams came, and then they said, "Okay, this is all right. This is all right." And the first album came, and it was a real big success. And then they were all sticking their chests out about it.
Well, okay. So tell me about, you mentioned before you started talking about the first song that you did with the Barkays, and it turned out really well. So, what how did this evolve? How did the group evolve, bringing you in as a vocalist when they've been a pure instrumental group? How long did it take to gel, and what role did they give you? Were you writing any songs with them, or tell us more about it?
No, at that time, none of us were really writing much. There was Alan Jones, who I keep referring to. He was who it was our mentor. He eventually was our producer, and then eventually managed us. But he was the brains, man. He was the brains. In our first album, we covered three songs. We covered "I've Been Trying" by Curtis Mayfield and
Hmm.
the Impressions. We covered. When I say covered, I mean we recorded. We re-recorded "Baby I Love You" by Aretha Franklin. And we re-recorded "You Don't Know Like I Know," done it differently, quite well, just a different twist on it at all. We were something else, man. We were putting together R&B. We were fusing R&B rock and soul just delicately, following the scripts that Alan laid out for us. And they were sometimes the songs had they were 6-7 minutes long, man, with heavily influenced by what Isaac would do, because Alan was also played with Isaac. And
Isaac,
Isaac did all those long, drawn out
that's
arrangements.
Isaac Hayes, by the way, right?
Isaac
Yeah.
Hayes,
Yeah.
exactly. So we did a lot of stuff like that. Now there were some songs that the rest of the album was songs that were written by some of the Stax writers. Did we write? I don't think we came up with. Alan may have written one or two songs, but we got the songs from kind of wherever we could. But it was the way we recorded and the personality. Now understand, now up until that point, nobody had heard anything but instrumental stuff from the Barcades. Now this little 120-pound guy with long straight hair. He's in front, and he's got this raspy voice, and he's sounding a little bit like Joe Cocker and a little bit like Tina Turner, and mixed all together, and a little Otis Redding and Ray Charles. But it turned out to be something very unique. We were really getting into something. Now the record label thought we were crazy. They, they didn't have the slightest idea as to what we were doing, because it was a basic R&B label, and we were like
Yeah,
bad
yeah,
kids. We were bad
yeah,
kids. But
yeah. You're mentioning cover songs, and everybody wants to hear. A lot of people want to hear original songs, but cover songs are so important because it brings more credibility to the history of R&B, because it re-emphasizes some of the great songs that were once recorded and now being re-recorded over and over again, and it stays alive in front of everybody. And one of my favorite artists who I know, or Macy Gray. Do you know her?
yeah.
Yeah, Macy. I lived in Cleveland. Macy and I were good
Okay.
friends, and she does cover songs. When she does a song, she makes it her own, and oftentimes it's better than the original. You know,
Think about Luther Vandross. Think about
Luther,
his career.
perfect example. And so sometimes people say, well, they don't write their own music, but cover songs are vitally important to keep traditions alive. You know,
You're absolutely
yeah,
right. And retro back to another artist who was just incredible, Isaac Hayes, who re-recorded Walk On By. By the
will come
time
by.
I get to
Yes,
Phoenix, I Stand Accused. All these were cover songs, man. And he just took them and he made them his own. And it is a big challenge, I would tell you that, to
it is.
make the song as interesting as the original artist. And sometimes you don't have to do it exactly
No,
like
no.
it was recorded, but you got to put a twist on it, and you got to give the song its proper.
Yeah, it's a blend between maintaining the song so that people recognize it, but
Yeah,
then make it your own so people are hearing something special and something new. Like you said, a new twist.
little
So,
twist,
yeah,
exactly. So
yeah,
that was our first album. Black. It was called Black Rock. It was just an incredible album. Some of our best work even today. And we've done 30 albums. So
yeah.
that album got us started, and the band was getting to like me, and we started doing the gigs and started playing those iconic places like the Whiskey a Go Go and the Troubadour, and we got to be really well known on the circuit, man.
Weren't you guys on the Midnight Special on the TV?
Absolutely, we did
Yeah,
the Midnight Special.
yeah,
Absolutely, we
yeah.
did the
Soul
Soul
Train.
Soul Train.
Yeah,
We
I remember watching it. Yeah,
for black artists, when you here's how you know you've arrived. When you play Soul Train, you have
yep,
arrived.
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It was a Black American bandstand.
Here's a bit of trivia. So Don Cornelius, before it was Soul Train, it was called something else, but he recorded the show in Chicago on the 45th floor of this building. The Barcades were the first band to ever play on this show. The first group to ever
Really?
play on the show was the OJs. It evolved to
Oh
be
wow.
Soul Train, but at that time it was called something else, a little small room. And I think back to think of all of the firsts that we've done, and that was a first for our career and for Don Cornelius, man. We were the
Yeah,
very first band to ever play. He told us that.
yeah. That's amazing. That's were the Bar-Kays more of a studio band or a touring band? How did you blend both?
Well, here's the short story. So when Booker T and MGs, they were originally a house band, but when they got rich and started playing golf, the Barcades were like waiting in the ring, in the wings, and all it would take is for the guys to play with one session, and they would love us. And I didn't play too much of a part in all that. It was really our rhythm section that turned out to be just this iconic 4 or 5 pieces that the artists at Stax could not do without uh, just all of the
Yeah.
artists there at Stax love the Barcades, man.
And the Bar-Kays had no formal musical training, right?
No, none,
Yeah.
none.
Could they read? Could they read charts? Couldn't. Yeah.
Couldn't.
It
Then
was
you
all
know
by
what?
ear.
No, oh yeah, and all of it was done live, and that's what soul music is about. And it's not taking away from anything from guys who do read, but most of the guys in Memphis who came through Stax Records, most of them couldn't read.
Yeah.
They played from the session, had good memories. The only thing about it is when you messed up, you had to start all over again.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's
It was
right.
live.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
you couldn't re-record it. You couldn't take the track. It wasn't no tracks. There wasn't no track to take. It was
Yeah.
8 tracks.
But you know what? That's one of the blessings to me of live music. It's called mistakes, and
Yeah,
it happens all the time. But that's the fun of live music. Nobody's perfect. You know,
nobody's
if you want
perfect.
to hear a perfect recording, listen to the technology.
Oh my God, yeah. You know, here's another piece of trivia. So there was one of our biggest records called Attitude. This was like years later. So we were out recording this. We were recording the song. I was on the floor, just singing. We had 2 verses written. We hadn't finished the song, and we all was there playing it live. And when we finished the song, Alan, our producer, same guy I've been talking about, he said, "That's it." I said, Alan, we haven't, what do you mean that's it? He said, you guys not going to touch this record ever again. You guys have just had a piece of magic. I said, Alan, the song ain't but 3 minutes long. He said, I don't care. I said, we don't have a third verse. It doesn't matter. The song actually wasn't even 3 minutes long, but Alan would not let us touch the record again because as a producer, he knew we wasn't going to outdo it. I said, Alan, that was a demo I just did. He said, Larry, you're not going to sing that song any better. And as a
Yeah,
producer, I find myself emulating some of the same things that Alan used to say. I produced a lot of records. When that magic happens, Mel, you know, man,
that's right. That's
it's
right.
you don't duplicate it. You take it like it is, mistakes
Yeah,
alone, because it
yeah,
feels so.
exactly. You know, when you get to the 1970s, and now the Bar-Kays is a well-established band, they have such amazing hits. Shake Your Rump to the Funk,
Yeah, man,
Attitude, Move Your Boogie Body. You know,
absolutely. Shake your rump.
Sexomatic, Anticipation. You know, Freak Show on the Dance Floor,
Oh yeah,
Hit
none
and
of gold
Run.
albums.
She talks to me with her body, and
Yeah,
Too Hot
man.
to Stop. I mean, I list all these. I remember them so well. You know, I mean, these was just one hit after another.
We had great times, man. And our producer, Alan, and you're gonna hear me say his name a lot because he was just the idol maker. He would put us in a room. The records were mostly written by 3 of us. Myself, Winston was the music guy. Harvey and I, we did the lyrics most of the time. But Alan would put us in a room at 10 o'clock in the morning. He said, "Don't come out till you finish the song." He would come out. Oh, I mean, literally, that was our job every day, and it was the best training that we could ever get because he would come in some days. He would say, "What you got?" And he would look at it, and he would just take it right in front of my face and tear it up, and it would like
Really?
we would break our hearts. But then some days he would come in and say, "Oh my God, this is amazing. Let's go into the other studio because we've always owned the studio and we record this one." But as time went on, we started to spit them out so well till all he would come in and do is said, "Okay, what you got today?" And then they just started to roll out, shake your up to the funk, hit and run, shake. She talks to me about it. There was gold album after gold album. We got the wind of it, man. And it was a
Yeah,
very good feeling to see him being pleased and for us to learn the methods of really putting together music.
yeah. You know, Stax was a wonderful family. You know, I mean, the way
Yeah.
all the musicians interacted. In '75, I think it was, they went bankrupt.
Yeah,
Right?
man.
And what happened to you guys? You went to Mercury, I think. What was that? The next place you went?
Yeah, but we were at Stax for 5 albums, and then we were the last act. We were the last act to actually leave. We were there. I was on the parking lot, Mel, when the IRS came and locked the doors.
Wow.
And then before we left, the Staples singers left. And I don't know, for some reason, they just wouldn't let us go. And we left there in 1975. The doors of Stax closed. And in 1976, we got a major deal with Mercury Records for about $500,000
Yeah, back
and
then, that's a ton of money.
ton of
Yeah,
money. And
yeah.
the album I'm pointing to back in, that's the Too Hot to Stop album. That was our first gold album. And they just started to roll after that.
Wow. So how did you like? How is Mercury different from Stax? You know, as a operation to work for.
It was a bigger, a well-oiled machine. And here's some of the acts that Mercury had. They had Confunction, the Gap Band, the Commodores, the Bar-Kays, um, who I'm missing 5 or 6 others. They had a plethora of just all what we call the self-contained bands.
Right.
They were the right Ohio players. They
Yeah.
were the right label.
Is Cameo there?
Cameo was there.
Yeah.
Exactly
Yeah.
right. Exactly right. They had all of the self-contained funk bands. So we were at a label where they understood it. And then you know what? Another big thing now, it wasn't about a one record. They were there. They were interested in making sure that your career was going to go somewhere. If it didn't happen on this record, they would say we're going
See,
to get them.
that's great. So you had A&R really worked with you guys,
That's
right?
exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm talking about A&R. They
Yeah.
cared, man. And today, the
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
difference today is
Yeah.
one record acts. When you
Yep.
don't get it on their first record, you're gone.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. They'll invest
Yeah.
nothing in you, and before they even pick you up, they want you to have at least 600,000 hits on your site, or they won't even talk to you.
You better know it. And
Yeah.
all they want you got to start the fire, put logs on it. And if they see the fire, they'll come and running then
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
for one shot. For one
That's
shot.
it. I know.
And that's it. I call it the flavor of the day. It's horrible. It's a
Look,
horrible way, which has led us to starting our own labels and being our own boss, so
you
to
know,
speak. Yeah.
let's talk about this for a minute, and then we'll go on and start talking about the '80s and other things. But
Sure.
let's talk about this. So much has changed over the life of your career. You know, it went from records, to 8 track, to cassette, to CD,
Yeah.
to streaming,
Yeah.
and it went from radio controlling musicians and
Yeah.
studios controlling musicians to independence.
Sure.
The music used to be so diverse. You had funk, R&B, you had rock, you had, I mean, it was so soul. It was,
Yes.
but it's so diverse. And now all the jazz and blues stations are gone. You really hear of a jazz and blues station anymore. Most
Mhm.
of it is urban music. It's sterile.
Yes.
It's computer produced, and
It's
it's
shallow.
it's shallow. It is, and look. I may be old, and maybe that's the problem. But when I don't hear instruments at all in a lot of the music, a lot of the hip hop and a lot of the rap. You hear syncopation, but you don't hear music. There's a difference.
You're absolutely right,
Yeah,
Mel. And I touched on it when we were talking about during the time I was with the Temprees in the early days in Memphis has been a music mecca. Just as Detroit was with Motown and Philly was with Philly International, there was music everywhere. It was good music, and now you know to the writers, they're not writing for anything more than to get one song that a record label's interested in, and it's just so different. It's
yeah.
all the funds out of it. It's so
Wow.
non-caring,
You
and
know,
it's
Larry, you're so on target. Sheryl Crow was telling me a while ago that she's really angry because songs are now produced by algorithms. That they get a team of 10 or 12 people together, and the computer gives them the hook. It's so sterile, and it's no fun anymore. It's not a
it's not.
collaboration between musicians and vocalists and songwriters. It's not there anymore. And she just can't stand it.
Well, if she's been around the block, she's had a very fruitful career, and she comes from a time when she's a songwriter too, and
That's
it's
right.
just
Yeah.
heartbreaking for guys like myself and guys who've come from nowhere to become somebody because of the songs and the time they spent writing all these wonderful songs, and the desire is sort of left them.
Yeah.
It's thank God for being able to perform live.
Yeah.
If it were not for that, a lot of artists would be retired now.
Oh my God, yes. And you
That's the
you
only
can't
line.
you can't make a living today unless you perform live. You
That's
have to.
exactly right. That's
You
exactly
get 0.003 cents for a play on on a stream. If you get 100,000 hits, you made $800.
Look, man. I was going through my stuff, my mail the other day, and I found a check for 19 cents.
There you go.
I'm gonna put it on my wall to remind me of just how bad it has gotten. That ain't all my checks ain't like that, but that one was just. Why in the world would you send me a check for 19 cents?
Yeah, it's gotten really ridiculous. And and Neil Young, he pulls a lot of his music because he says, and he's right, streaming doesn't produce the same richness that analog did, before. And when you stream, he says you're losing a lot of the musical and the instrumentation, the phonics are just not there. And he doesn't want his music played that way. And
that's something.
So technology has been a blessing. Anybody can perform. Anybody can have a record out there. But it's been, but it's a curse because no one can make any money, and the sound quality is not what it used to be. Nothing can replace analog for pure sound. It's not doable.
And think about what it's doing to the kids who are listening now. Their ears are not prone to good music. The radio is getting them indoctrinated to something else. Now, all of the music is not bad, but the approach to all of it is goofy. It's just very goofy. And I pray that I live long enough to see a better day. I don't have much confidence,
But there's hope. And I don't know if you'll agree with me.
You think?
Yeah, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I'll tell you my hope. It starts with Bruno Mars. And I think Bruno Mars went and sampled the old music so authentically and gave it a wonderful modern riff. He just really understands the music. And my favorite now, John Batiste.
Oh my God, I discovered him as well. Oh my God,
isn't he amazing? And he sampled. He's classically trained musician, piano player, and and he loves that old vibe. So there are young guys out there that I think represent a transition, and obviously people listening to them. Batiste won 5 Grammys.
He certainly did. He certainly did.
So
you hit on an interesting point. Bruno and those kids are some of my favorite guys, man. They re-recorded a Love Train, which was done originally by Confunction. And they were so smart. They knew the record was not broken. They did not try to reinvent it.
That's right.
They carefully re-recorded the record, and it made for a pretty good Christmas. I was talking to Cooper a few minutes ago, and he said he had a real good Christmas this year.
Really? Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
See, that's where I think there's hope. Another place I found hope.
Yeah.
I went to the Newport Jazz Festival in 2019, just before the pandemic.
Okay.
And that the average age was 30? They were so young. It was unbelievable. I'd never seen that at the Newport Jazz Festival before. Young people were there in droves in 2019. So, I think young people are hungry for something different, something, to get their feet moving again. I think they're tired of the sterileness of a lot of the music they have to hear.
That's interesting, and I see, and I get your point, and maybe you're on to something with that, because as I said, all the music is not bad that's coming out, and the kids are curious. They're curious through samples, and because wondering where that thing came from, where that intro came from, and they're going back getting the vinyl, and vinyl is, they're not even making CDs anymore, but vinyl is a new thing. These kids are going back and looking at their mom and dad's stack of vinyl records.
Vinyl's the biggest selling form of music now.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, vinyl's made a comeback. So, and vinyl is analog, and so that's why I think, Larry, I think there's hope out there, but the music was squeezed so thin that there's kind of a minor rebellion starting. We want something. We want something a little more.
It's good for us. It's good for old timers like us, man. We're still out there reaching, and we're one record away. That's what keeps us in this business. Producers say your next record is gonna be it. So it's like chasing. It's like the dog is chasing the steak on the stick.
That's right.
But he's always chasing it.
That's right.
But I love it. I still love the business. I've always had a record label. I have a studio here in my home, and I have the product here on the walls too. I've had a great career.
I know you. Oh, look, I know you have. It's wonderful. Let's talk about the '80s for a minute, because that was a very transitional period for the Bar-Kays. Some of the members left, other members passed away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what happened during the 80s? Why don't you tell us about it a little bit and, you know, how it transitioned for you?
Well, after going from a period of being really, 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 really hot, you know, we were starting to cool off somewhat, and then been lucky enough to have a hit record in 5 decades. But music has changed a lot. Through disco was like a thing that came along that totally ran the bands away from being able to play in clubs because they didn't need them anymore. You know,
Yep.
you got a DJ there to do that, and that was a horrible time for live music because it stifled the bands, you know. But we survived through all of that. Through our music, we changed, and I have to say we started using a drum machine sometimes rather than using a live set. We didn't give all the way into all of that, but we weren't late 80s. We weren't as popular, but I'm tell you what kept us alive. Our stage act was so good. We had a really big production on the road, man. We had fire, smoke, bombs. I used the snake in the last 10 minutes. And
Yeah,
we had
Python.
all
Yeah.
sorts of things going on. And it was amazing to go see the Barcades live. So that kept us, even when we didn't have a top 10 record. We've had 20 top 10 singles. But you know one thing we've never had?
Mm.
We have never had a number one record. And I tell you,
Really? I didn't know
we
that.
always released in the same period that Michael Jackson would release.
Oh, wow.
And Michael
Yeah.
Jackson was always right there at number one, and we were there at number two. We could never stay there long enough
Wow.
to get past Billie Jean and all those incredible songs. We had to change our release period because he and I everybody released the same time. Michael Jackson could never get a number one record.
That's
That's what we never
I
had. We
didn't
20 top 10 records, but never had a number one record.
I didn't know that.
Nope, we never had
Wasn't
gold and platinum.
Soulfinger number one?
No, it was
It
number two.
wasn't. Wow.
It was number two.
Wow.
That's
I thought
exactly
that was
right.
number one for sure. I didn't know that. I learned
Not
something
and
new.
not in Billboard. It was now. It was. We've had records that were number one in the cities, but not in Billboard. You know, not in Cashbox. You know, none of that. We've never had a number one record.
Wow.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Out of
I'm
30
shocked.
albums,
I'm shocked.
you are.
I thought you guys probably had 10 number one hits at least.
No, we've
Wow.
had a bunch of number twos, 20 top tens, but never a number one record. It is
So
amazing.
so in the 80s, you stopped doing studio recording, you started touring, and you were out of the country for a long time. Is that right?
We were going to the East a lot, and we were very, 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 very popular in Japan and in
Yeah.
Korea, and we didn't spend a lot of time in Europe, and we always wanted to go to Africa and play, but it was never enough money or something always prohibited us from doing it. But we went overseas quite a bit, and we were still very popular. You know, we still were having a lot of success here, but things were going on musically, and the radio was changing. And the younger the programmers got, the tougher it was
Yeah.
for the Barcades and Cameo and the Gap Band and Confunction and the Commodores and George and Clinton, and it got to be tough because they were younger and they didn't really understand how iconic these guys were, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are the guys that were controlling radio. So we played and lasted through all of that. But the 90s became another era. Uh, 90s is a very popular era right now. It's rehatched. A lot of those guys who came up, Teddy Riley and all those guys who came up during the 90s, a lot of the vocal groups, they're having a lot of work right now. I don't know what I attribute that to. Probably the absence. People miss that music, but the 90s are very significant right now, you know.
What kind of music in the 90s you're referring to? Neo
Well,
soul or
it's the stylistics,
right.
the stylistics, the enchantment, Teddy Riley, uh, the 90s brought about the New Jack and all of that stuff. You know, it's a lot of the new edition. a lot of those acts are rehatching right now. I have a booking agency, and I've had it since 1999, and it's a big booking agency as well. So I have to keep my eye on the acts that are working more. You know,
Right. Right.
I'm also on the radio now. I have a show. I did. There was a new radio station that came to town and came up in. It was the FM and AM station, and they needed a celebrity DJ, and I wasn't doing anything. This was 2 years ago. I started, and I took a Saturday show for them, But I absolutely, man, it was something I never done, but I really love it.
You
I
know,
really love it.
you mentioned Japan. My station, Source Radio, has a huge Japanese contingent that listens to my station all the time.
Is that correct?
Yeah, like last week, I had on Markel Jordan, the sax player, and
Okay.
Mark when Markel was on, I had like 1,100 people from Japan listening in.
Wow.
1,100 people, and they must know who he is, and they came to listen to him. You know, so
That's such a, yeah, that's such a devoted audience over there,
it
man.
is. It is. It really is. Another devoted audience. And in fact, I've I am an affiliate of the BBC. So,
Okay.
in Britain, they love blues. They love
Ah,
swing.
yeah.
They
Yeah.
love that music, and it plays there so well. Because they had Skittle, which was, Skittle music was, and they had shuffle. They had all different kinds of music that was moving from swing to jazz to rock, but it always embodied a lot of the music that was being played here as R&B and blues. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I right now they're playing some of your tracks, on the BBC, and
That's absolutely great.
yeah,
We
and
made
the
a lot
music,
of music, man. A lot. Like I said,
yeah,
30 albums. It's not many bands who have
no,
made that much music.
no, no.
We're in a very elite group.
I respect that so much because you could be a one hit wonder, but one of my friends, Mesa's done 20 albums in 20 years.
See there?
And she has a legacy. I mean, she's put herself out there. She doesn't just do one album every 5 years. I mean, she works hard and puts herself out there. And Mickey Howard's another one. These
Yeah,
people
absolutely. Absolutely. See,
they've put
I
out.
book all those acts, through
Yeah,
my booking agency. Yeah.
Mickey's been on my show, on the same show you're on now. She's been on here too.
She's
You
a
know,
hoot.
oh, she's a riot, and she's so humble.
Yeah.
She's remarkably humble. I asked her about what did it feel like when you were nominated for a Grammy, and she said another day at the office. And she said she wasn't putting it down, but she said that's my job. I'm supposed to do that.
Well, there, like I said, she's a hoot. She's a
But
different.
that's what makes her so good because that's her craft. She's
Yeah.
supposed to be working at her craft. So it's not the kudos, it's the result that she's interested in. I heard her live not long ago.
She's very
She,
good.
she her interpretations of music are so incredible. The way in which she pronounces vowels, the cadence in her voice, she is remarkable at how she interprets a song. I listen very carefully to her. And so much of that is still around, but you can't hear it any place. That's the
you
problem.
you're absolutely right. I mean, you got to have some place to
Yeah.
for that makes all this stuff that we're talking about available for people, the human ears. And radio is just so different, man.
Yes, it is. That's why my station is so eclectic, and I get 6,000 listeners per hour to the
I
jazz.
can imagine.
I have more listeners on my station than any of the FM stations in Baltimore and Washington.
Wow, that's
Because they're
amazing.
not playing jazz. Obviously, people want to hear it. You know.
That's right, and that's almost it's probably jazz has suffered a great deal because there are virtually no stations for good jazz. And I love jazz,
No.
man.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love
It's
it. I
it's
mean, I
so
love it
rich. It's so rich.
absolutely, and it's so intelligent.
Yes, it is.
It's
That's
very
a
intelligent.
good point. Yeah. Let
Yeah,
me take you to something else that's intelligent. You
yeah.
started a gospel label, or you started doing gospel. Is that right?
I did. We had a label called Testimony Records. That's another. I am gospel music, jazz, and I love classical music. And people probably would never think that, but I'm just a avid ear for all kinds of music, not just the music that I make, in the genre that I perform and do well in. But yeah, we signed two choirs. We signed a lot of the better gospel groups around Memphis, the best that we could find, and we tried to revive Stax, but that we just couldn't get. We tried to find acts that were still available that were at Stax years ago, and to give them another shot. We were only able to get the Soul Children and Jay Blackfoot back, who were really, really, really good during the Stax days. Most of them were dead, or
Yeah, yeah,
not able to perform. But
perform, yeah,
yeah, but Mel, you took the bull by the horns, and you're a vessel now for music that not only that you like, but that music that you can't hear on terrestrial
right.
radio, right? So
That's
I
right.
get it, and I tip my hat to you. That's the same thing we've
Thank
done with
you.
our record labels. We were just trying
Thank
to give people music that they weren't able to hear in other
you.
ways.
Yeah, didn't James start that with you? Start the record
Yes, it
label?
did. It was called JEA, Right Now Records. He had a label, I had a label, and we put them together. And we did about maybe 5 albums on the Barcades through that, and we signed about 7 or 8 acts. But one thing about it, when the money is constantly going out and not enough coming in,
I
it
mean,
makes it doesn't
yeah,
it doesn't equate.
yeah.
It's
When I
very
started the
challenging. Let me put it
when
like
I
that.
when I, when I started the radio station, I got a T-shirt that said, "Happiness is a positive cash flow," because the money was
Yeah.
going out, but it wasn't coming in yet.
Oh, I know
Yeah,
so you know the story.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's very challenging. It's very challenging. So,
Yeah.
but
Have I left any? Go, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, so after I retired, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I retired a couple of years ago, and I thought I really was going to retire for good, but I just couldn't. I've been married to a wonderful woman for 52
Wow,
years.
that's wonderful.
Yep, yep,
Congratulations.
yep, yep. And she and I said we were just going to stop and just stop mulling around and just live the rest of my life, without all the hustle and bustle. But I missed it so very much, man. So I
Yeah.
started the label, which is called Music Moves, with my son, Larry Jr., and I was the premier artist on that label. And we our doors are open. We're still looking for other acts, but we're just very selective, though.
I was talking to your son Larry about you having a radio show on my station.
Absolutely right. I told you, and here we're gonna have conversations about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I got because you can bring a lot of these acts on the show, and get
absolutely.
and let
It's
people hear them. I have a vast listening audience, and I'd love to have you, bring back a lot of these memories and these people that are so wonderful, and the music is still so vital for people to hear it again.
we're gonna have conversations about
Yeah,
that. Trust me.
good. Hey, look, did I leave anything out up until the 2000s that we pretty much cover everything? Was there anything else you want to add?
uh, you know, I, I'm just still at it. That's the biggest thought that I would like for our listeners and viewers to understand, that I'm still at it. And I have this thing that I tell my son: when you're sitting in the stands, all you can do is watch the game.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I still want to take the bat up and swing at it. And if I miss 1 or 2, eventually I'm going to get another hit. Eventually. But I know one thing you do know: when you sit in the stands, there's nothing. Just all you're doing is just watching. It's
Larry,
very difficult for me to watch.
I love listening to you because I've always had an expression that life is not a spectator sport.
Gotta get in and live it a little bit. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yes, sir, yes,
You
sir. But we
can't
find that
watch. You
some
can't
people
watch
are
from the
living.
sidelines.
Yeah, yeah. Some people are living to die, and some people are
Yeah.
dying to live.
Yeah.
I'm
Look,
dying to live.
I've been waiting for this for the whole show. I'm going to play one of your songs. Why don't you tell everybody about Harmonica Man? It's one of your recent songs. How did that come about?
So I went to here's the introduction to that. I went to this club one night, and this kid was on stage, and he was absolutely killing it on harmonica. And my road manager said, "Man, please, Larry, you need to write a song about this kid." And I did. I mean, it didn't take me that long. I went home after a couple of 3 or 4, 5 days, and I went to my piano in my living room and started chatting around. And then after I recorded, I called him. I said, "Man, I've called." His name is Yellow P, but his name is really Damien. I said, Damon, I've written this song about you. I said, it's called Mr. Monica Man. Will you come and play on it? And he was like elated that I'd even done something like that. First of all, that I'd even called him. He came in one take, man. He killed it. But that's the introduction.
Tell me about the vocals on it.
So I had finished the album. I had finished my album. I had done 11 songs. I had done 11 songs. This was the 12th song on the album. And I said, I want to make a different kind of record. And this Monica Man is going to be different from anything I have on it. So I wanted the vocals to be retro. I wanted to be soulful, R&B, and very, very, very old-fashioned, so to speak. But they call it Southern Soul here. But I didn't have a song on the album like this. And I said I was going to do it, and I did. And we had such fun. I've just finished the video on it a few weeks ago, and it's going to, in fact, it debuted Monday. So it's just a wonderful, different kind of a record. The intro reminds you of the Staples Singers a little bit, you know.
Yeah. Look, I don't have the video, unfortunately, but I have the song. So let me
please play it for the.
Let me play it right now. Okay, let me just pull this up here.
That's playing the harmonica, and he is off the chain.
I'm gonna take these last $2 and they're going back down to that hole in the wall. See, down at this funky little joint, they got this hell of a band, and the star of the show, you ought to hear him blow. They call him Mr. Harmonica Man. He's big booty Judy and sexy Susie, and don't stop, whatever you do. When he starts to play, you got to dance to Mr. Harmonica Man. When he starts to play, you got to
Wonderful track,
Man,
Larry.
that's such a fun record, man.
You know who that reminds me of so much? Sly Stone.
Oh yeah, well, that's another one of my mentors.
Yeah. Oh, I love Sly, and yeah,
Oh yeah.
that track reminds me of the kind of music they used to put out.
Oh yeah. And he was also a guy who played the harmonica. One of the highlights of my career, I spent 30 days in New York with Sly, man.
You did.
Yep. M2 had him, and M2 was producing 3 or 4 songs on the Barcades, and it was one of the last albums that we did for Mercury, and he had Sly staying up in New Jersey, and he asked me if I wanted to work with him. I said, "My God, yeah."
Yeah.
I worked the whole month in New York. He was a perfect gentleman, man.
That's
And
wonderful.
it was really just a really special time for me. We got to be good friends, man.
You know, I love funk, and you know, and Sly was, you know, another person had major influence, you know, on music.
Oh yeah.
Major influence. You know, he's so creative, and he wrote all that stuff. You know.
He was a poet.
Yeah.
And we took a lot from him and his the way his band dressed. If you looked at our band, man, we were really trying to be as fascinating as he was, but he was a different, special guy. There's only one Sly Stone.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. Only one guy.
Well, look, Larry, just tell everybody, since you're still a young guy, what's in your future? What are you planning to do?
More music, more music. I'm right now contemplating my next album and just trying to figure out what I want to do, what I want to say on this next album, you know, and who I want to say it to, you know, just the thought process of that already. But you know, you know, we didn't touch on this, but when during the time that prior to me leaving the Barcades, I wrote my biography, which is called "And the Band Plays On." I'll probably do another book and some stuff to keep myself busy and taking on new ventures, man. And probably try to get involved in some movies, scores, stuff like that. Things I haven't done, you know.
You know, I have a friend I want to hook you up with. Now that you mentioned movies, I have a friend, Lavelle Powell. Lavelle writes, scores music for Hollywood movies, and you know they have one of the movies he's done recently is called Guns and Grams, and it's been syndicated internationally, and he's been contracted to do 10 more movies. So
Really?
you know I want to hook you up with him because
Man,
I'm sure he'd love to work with you. He's a wonderful guy. He's out in Arizona. You know,
I'd love to do that. Those are things I'm trying to do. Stuff I haven't done, man. You know, stuff to just keep my imagination going because I'm still in good health. You know, I like I said, been married to a wonderful wife. You know, and we're just amazing together. So, and I have a good son who's.
Yes.
I'll have a lot of stuff to leave to him, and he's running. He's a smart kid, and he's keeping the record label inventive. So I'm gonna be doing stuff. I'm not gonna sit down for a while. I certainly won't be retiring for a while.
That's wonderful. That's so terrific.
And we're gonna be doing stuff together, man. So just look out for that.
I'm looking forward to it. Let me pull this up so everybody can take a look, and maybe you can tell people how can they reach you if they want to get involved. Go ahead.
Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter on The Real Larry Dodson. If you want to go to my website, www.thelarrydodson.com, my tour schedule and my books and all the stuff that I'm doing is all that information is right there.
And what's the name? What's the name of your most recent album?
The new album is called Yours Truly, Larry D. And I just admonish you to please get that. It's some of my best work. Yours Truly, Larry D. And it's available also on my website and wherever you get good music, okay?
Wonderful. Yeah, you know, by the way, you're the artist right now on Source Radio Network, the featured artist. And if people want to hear Harmonica Man again, or they click just below, it will take them right to your website and they can buy your new album you have out.
Please do that. Please and keep listening to this guy because he's the last of the Mohicans, and ain't many of us left.
Thank you.
I still
have some here.
It's been delightful.
Larry, this was delightful. I can't thank you enough for being on the show. You know, I just really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. We're gonna be doing stuff together. Trust me. All right.
I'm looking forward to it. Okay. So
All right,
look,
you
you
have
take care of yourself. Say hello to your son for me and your wife, and we'll be in touch soon. Okay.
we shall have a great evening. All right.
You too. I'm going to put you backstage for a little while. Thank you, Larry.
All right, buddy.
Well, everybody, that was the wonderful Larry Dodson. You can't talk much about music in the past 50 years where you won't come across Larry the Barkays or some of the other amazing amounts of music he's done. I mean, he was just telling us he worked with Sly Stone. I mean, he's a living legend and a remarkable musician and a wonderful man, wonderful person. So, look, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If let your friends know if they want to. This is going to be rebroadcast. It'll be on iHeartRadio. It'll be on the Apple Store. It'll be on Amazon Alexa and Amazon Podcasts. You can pick up this and see it anywhere, and it'll be on Source Radio. We have a library of all the performers who have been on the Power Hour, so you can tune into Source, and you can go to the website. It's Source Radio, SORCRadio.com. And you can find all these great artists, and you can listen to their music and get to know them a little better. So I want to thank everybody out there for listening in, and we'll see you next time. We're going to be having Brian Culberson on. Brian Culberson is a celebrated jazz musician. He's a multi-instrumentalist. He plays at least, I think, 10 or more instruments. And he's a remarkable entertainer. So you'll be seeing Larry. And I'm going to have Raheem Devon on also. So we're going to be having some more of a wonderful guests on, and we're going to be having Annie Lennox on our show too. So everybody stay tuned, and we'll see you again next week. Have a great week.